First one was Umar Gaddafi of Libya. Traded large amounts of oil without using dollars, and he kind of got killed by the US government. The next one, Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein traded large amounts of oil without using US dollars, and all of a sudden, he kind of got killed by the US government. The third one is Vladimir Putin. Putin has traded large amounts of oil without using US dollars. And what happened last year? Nord Stream pipeline, remember this? Mm-hmm. Blew up. Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to the Flat Bill Investors Podcast. I'm Josh Zaglowski.
And I'm Zach Spencer. Welcome. We are happy to be here today. Josh, we've got a legendary human being with us today. Learned a lot about him. The first impression I got from him was him on his social media, walking around carrying a chicken with a cowboy hat on. This is true. I did see that post.
I didn't know that.
What you may not have seen or known, but he has launched and sold multiple investment funds to the tune of lots and lots of dollars. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Today, we are blessed to have Bridger Pennington with us. Bridger, welcome.
Good to be on the FBI podcast. I like
yes,
it.
Right?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, good.
Pretty fun.
We're excited about it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
So I've known Bridger. I want to get right into how I know Bridger. I've known Bridger when we were in Miami in 2020.
Yeah,
right in the pandemic. Is actually the second place I started talking about ERC. It's kind of funny.
Oh yeah.
I talked to your dad for a bit at the pool and all that stuff, but I was really impressed by you, more so because I met you and your brother, John the Fifth.
Sixth. John Pennington the sixth.
So your dad's the fifth.
Yeah. And he's got a son, the seventh.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I'm just Bridger the first.
Yeah,
so,
Bridger the first.
There you go.
So his dad started a fund years ago. I want to say 20 years ago or so. And Bridger was going to college and meets one of his dad's friends, which ends up being his business partner, and was like, hey, I kind of want to, start funds. And didn't really have an idea what your dad even did. Right?
Yeah. To give the fast story. Yeah. My dad we were in a very conservative household. So he drove a crappy car with a dent in the door, which was fine. We weren't poor by any means, but we were, just a middle class family kind of thing. And I go to his business partner's house, and his business partner is loaded, huge house, pool, cars, the whole thing. And come to find out, they were running this big, multi-billion-dollar fund together. Today, they were running $8 billion at the time. That's 2 times bigger than like Cardone Capital today, right? And they're doing multifamily. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And today I think they're 7 or 8 times bigger than that now. Wow. And he's now retired out. But it was quite a wake up call. Like, oh shoot, like they've made a lot of money. Now my dad lives a very, very conservative lifestyle. And so anyways, you can wrap up the story, but I went and started to learn about funds. My dad taught me about funds, and it led me to launch a fund in college. I then ran that fund for 3.5 years. We sold that fund. And then I've launched now 2 other funds since then. And then we've helped people online launch investment funds. We've launched over 300 funds with other people in our groups called Fund Launch.
The one thing that I thought was interesting, listening to your dad speak down there, was it's not like he makes it sound like it's easy, but it's like it's possible, because you always hear about all these things you have to do about getting, your SEC documents all prepared and everything. And you're just kind of like, man, it very seems daunting. And that's kind of the reason why you and I want to say, and your dad and maybe your brother too. I don't know how many, I think you have one or 2 business partners in Fund Launch, but it kind of segues into Fund Launch a little bit. That's why you saw a need there of people like me, for instance. I don't have a fund, but I've definitely looked at it maybe 10 years ago thinking like, that's a lot to do. Maybe I shouldn't do that. It's discouraged by a lot of people too, because of all the licensing. So,
well, yeah, it's this black box from the outside. It's like, I just don't even want to touch that. Right. There's so much compliance, regulation. It's just like, ugh, like I don't even want to think about it. I'll do a business that sounds more simple. But when you get inside and you start looking around, it's actually not as complex as people think. And the one thing I hate about the financial world is they create terms that sound very complex. But when you really break it down, it's pretty simple. But they just have these fancy terminology and stuff. And something my dad did for me, and I'm very grateful for, my dad really simplified things down. And my dad, if you brought him on here, like he did not do well in school. He's a C student at best. He's an entrepreneur. He, just started a bunch of businesses, ended up into the fund route. And so for him to understand things, he's like, I had to make it really simple and draw it out on a whiteboard. I'm a very visual thinker. And so when he taught me, his son, he'd get a whiteboard out and like, hey, this is how it makes sense to me. I remember at 12 years old, he taught me how does shorting work? How do you short a stock?
Interesting.
That's great.
And I was like, I don't know. How do you short? He's like, you can make money when the stock goes down. Yeah. And I was like, how is that? And he's like, well, you borrow a stock from a letter, and you have to pay that back for a certain contract value and the difference. And I'm like, I don't get it again. So we mapped it out 7 or 8 times, and I finally understood. But something really good about my dad is
Wow, that's awesome.
teaching options and shorts to your 12-year-old.
yeah,
I like it.
it's pretty. But because he really wasn't proficient at like his reading level. He grew up in North Las Vegas in a bad part of town. He had to learn in different ways.
Yeah,
sure.
And it makes him a really good teacher, which is pretty cool.
That's way cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of your dad, you talked about earlier, as we always want to try to, what can we do to add value to the audience? And you talked about something that would be kind of interesting for the audience is you and your dad co-authored a book together.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So the book's called Dollars, Gold, and Bitcoin. And I'm going to give all credit to my dad, but me and my brother both helped a lot on this book. But Dollars, Gold, and Bitcoin, we talk about the Fed's secret agenda and how to make money from it. The general thesis of the book is there are a lot of things right now in the world that don't make sense. But when you plug in the US dollar and usually oil into it, they start to make sense. So for example, you go back, it's kind of like the inception of this was 2018. My dad brings a report to us that there are around $13 trillion at zero or negative interest rates.
It's a crazy
Which
amount.
doesn't make sense.
No.
And it's like, I've taken economics classes. My dad's an economics major. He's like, I've never read a book, a paragraph on a negative interest rate. Like, what is that? And not like a little bit, to the tune of $13 trillion of negative rates. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
For example, we had a guy, he had a mortgage, I think it was in Denmark. His mortgage went negative. It was adjustable rate mortgage, went negative. The mortgage company paid him $23 a month to have a mortgage. That's a negative interest rate. If you're buying a negative bond, it's like you're putting your money in a bank and you're paying a fee to like put it in a vault. And I'll pay you a 1% fee to just put it in a vault so no one steals it. That's a negative interest rate, right?
So when you first said that, the first thought I was, because I did mortgages 20 plus years ago, and the big thing back then was interest only loans and negative AM loans. But that's not mistaken to think of a negative rate loan. Yeah.
They went negative. You have oil. Remember, oil traded negative. It went down to like for per barrel. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that.
Nickel went negative. Like, what? How does that even happen? Like, what is this? So, I'll give you the full run through the book. But we talk a lot about a few other things that are very interesting. J.P. Morgan Chase, largest bank in the world. They got fined the largest fine in the history of the SEC, just under $1 billion in 2019 for manipulating the precious metal market for the last 9 years. Wow. So gold, silver, a bunch of precious metals. There's a team at JP Morgan that was manipulating. Gold is a $12 trillion market cap. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
A company with limited resources was able to manipulate that price for a decade. Barclays was fined $300 million for manipulating the price of LIBOR, which is the London International Banking Rate, in 2007 and 8, I believe they figured it out. But they'd been doing it for years. And so we talk a lot about there are things that don't make sense. But when we back into certain things, they start to make sense. So how do you make sense of the world? Is kind of what we get to. So if you want, I can continue on if you'd like. But if you go off,
actually fascinating.
I'm actually kind of curious. I got a question about the JP Morgan. Do you feel like a bank like that, so big that I don't want to say the word is, because the word fraud is intent, right? But going for a decade, I mean, they were fined, let's just say $1 billion even you said it was under $1 billion. But how much money do they make in 10 years? Do they look at it like, gosh, man, I mean, I'd rather just pay the fine and continue to do this until we're caught. Yeah. I mean, how do you feel?
I think they said they made about $4 to $5 billion and they were fined $1 billion for that. So
pretty good investment.
I've heard of groups that they have a similar business model.
They also crazy. Like, do you know like what happened to them where they couldn't do something for a year or two?
I believe
slapped on the wrist.
I believe one guy went to jail.
Wow.
There was a lower level guy. The other guys they paid the fine and they moved on. So I believe that's what happened.
He went to that jail in Northern Cali where he was in a cabin.
Yeah, one of those. So anyways, we kind of look back all the way to the 1940s where the world reserve currency came to be with the U.S. was the Bretton Woods Agreement. At the end of World War II, 1944, all these nations came together in Bretton Woods, Connecticut. 44 nations came together and, I think it was 144 nations, came together and decided that they said this kind of new world order. And the agreement was no one had a navy. Having a navy is one of the most, is actually the most expensive thing you can buy for a country. If you're talking about things that are expensive, a navy is like by far the most expensive thing you buy. At the end of World War II, we were the only country on earth that really had a navy because everyone else had been blown up.
Yeah.
And so what we proposed, we said, hey, we will protect all of you. We will pay for a navy as long as you trade with us. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, that's it? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, just trade with us. Oh, and by the way, if you can, use the US dollar. And then over time, it became more codified. All international trade. This is 1944.
Yeah.
Over time, it became the petrodollar came to be. So all international trades of oil, large amounts, had to go and be done in US dollars. So if you were in, I don't know, Argentina and you were buying oil from Saudi Arabia, you had to do it in US dollars. You had to trade and use the Fed Swift system. So what it did is it created demand for dollars.
For dollars, yeah.
Right? Think of a dollars as an export.
Sure.
We'll put in the book, like we say, the dollars is the greatest export ever created, is US dollars.
Yeah.
We print 1 trillion of them. And people like us, we work 80 hours a week to get more of them, right? And they print another trillion. We work 80 hours a week, and some people lie, steal, and shield to get more of these things, right? It's the best thing ever created as an export, right? So anyways, that's gone on. You guys have heard of that before in currency wars and things like that. Just to put in perspective, this is just a fun aside. The US Navy is incredible. I mean, it is the most powerful force on earth. One aircraft carrier. So an aircraft carrier, when it leaves port, it goes with like 15 different ships. It's a strike group that it goes. We have 11 aircraft carriers and they're super carriers. They have 2 nuclear power plants on them. They can go for like 100 years without porting. I mean, they are massive. One aircraft carrier would be by itself, they have planes on them. It would be the 3rd most powerful air force in the world.
Just one.
One of them.
We have 11.
The United States Air Force is number 1. China would be number 2, and one aircraft carrier is the 3rd most powerful air force on earth. So when we go park an aircraft carrier off of Israel, like we just did, or when the Taiwan conflict, we parked 2 aircraft carriers.
It actually means something.
It's like the 3rd most powerful air force in the world just parked off your coast. It's like
2 of them.
Shoot. Yeah. And now they're 2, and they had one in the South China Sea, so it was 3. And it was like, okay, and things usually cool down, right? With that Taiwan conflict, it's like, oh shoot,
my mind's already racing. Like
I know, it's
I already
crazy.
want like Wikipedia, like how long does it take to build one of those?
Oh yeah. They're wild. We just launched the Ford class carrier. I could go on and on. I will. I think it's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, we have these aircraft carriers now patrol all seas. So that's why you're like, why is the U.S. the world police? It's because we protect all passageways of travel and of trade, and they have to use our currency. And if they don't, there's a few people in history that have not used our currency. So there's 3 people I know specifically that's traded large amounts of oil not using US dollars. First one was Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Traded large amounts of oil without using dollars, and he kind of got killed by the US government. The next one, Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein traded large amounts of oil without using US dollars, and all of a sudden, he kind of got killed by the US government. The third one is Vladimir Putin. Putin has traded large amounts of oil without using US dollars. And what happened last year? Nord Stream pipeline, remember this? Mm-hmm. Blew up.
Yeah.
And no one knew who did it. Someone with a submarine and Navy SEALs, but we don't know who did it. Blew up in 2 spots. It blew up, not just one. And simultaneously in 2 separate spots, it blew up their pipeline. And for a long time, and then there's a reporter, a Nobel Prize winning reporter that came out and said it was the U.S. government that did this. But anyways, it's a big deal when you don't trade large amounts of oil using dollars. So for example, China. So let's talk about the national debt, right? $36 trillion or $1 trillion every 100 days, which is a lot. Okay. And there's other people that can talk all about this, and it's always negative, right? I'm going to take a different point of view though. Okay. For a second, if we had 0 debt today, I would be more concerned than if we had $36 trillion of debt. And the reason for that is when you have $36 trillion of debt, it's paid back. It's owed in US dollars. Mm-hmm. It's not owed in rubies. It's not owed in euros. It's not owed in bitcoins. It's owed in US dollars. Mm-hmm. So if China has $1 trillion of debt with us or bonds that they hold, if they tank our currency, the BRICS nations are coming together, right?
It's really their own. They're shooting themselves.
They lose $1 trillion.
Right.
They can't. Even if they want to get off it, which they do probably. They're probably like, we got to get off this dollar thing. They can't because of how much debt they hold. And other people hold, right?
Yeah, interesting.
It makes it very sticky. And so back in COVID, we put rates to 0, right? We flooded the world with cheap loans. And everyone's like, yeah, I'll take some dollars. That sounds great. Yeah. And now they're tied to our currency even more. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, 36 trillion is a lot. Could it be 18 trillion? Yes. We could probably tailor that down a little bit.
I think we always need to have debt.
Yeah.
Like as an entrepreneur, that's the one thing you kind of teach, is to, in order to have your business survive, you need to have debt or, some sort of cash flow, and that what creates is the debt. Yeah. So,
So anyways, that's an interesting view of the debt. So for example, China back in 2021 was like, we're going to sell these treasuries. They had about $1 trillion. We're getting off the dollar, the BRICS nations. Remember this?
But who's buying them?
And they had to sell them to somebody, right? And then they're like, we're going to take Taiwan. Remember all this? This happened. We put 3 aircraft carriers between us and Taiwan. And then what did we do? We jacked interest rates at the fastest rate in history. Now, there's a lot of inflation was what they told us, right? Yeah. Inflation, other things. Sorry, I'll back up. a lot of people
Yeah.
operate of, Jerome Powell's an idiot. The White House, they're idiots. Everyone's an idiot. You hear people say this on podcasts. Everyone's stupid. I'm like, really? The people that run the most powerful country on earth are just idiots. They just happen to be up there. Now, I know they sound like idiots on the TV, but watch what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing a crazy, incredible game.
Yeah.
And I'm going to err more on the side. They're incredibly smart, and they sometimes say stupid things to just tell us, it's inflation. When they jacked rates as fast as they did, it devalued bonds by 50%. So China was going to sell their bonds. Let's say they had $1 trillion of bonds. They're now only worth $500 billion at market rate.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh shoot, now we can't sell our bonds. That's what took down Silicon Valley Bank, if you don't recall. Silicon Valley Bank, they bought bonds. Like imagine being a bank owner and you're like, well, we have some extra cash. What should we do? I guess we'll buy some bonds. That's a pretty safe.
Seem safe.
That's a pretty risk mitigated. That's a good. We would all probably agree. That's a good idea. That took down their entire bank.
Yeah.
Was because that market to market took it down. There was withdrawals, and then there was a run on the bank. Right.
I thought about that for a minute. That was crazy.
And so anyways, I'm giving you a few examples we talk about in the book of there is a bigger game at hand. Who is playing what? Saudi Arabia announced they're going to get off, not trade oil in dollars. President Biden flew on his plane over there. And after that meeting, whatever happened, they started trading in dollars again.
Seems like an episode of Scandal. Something like that. They just fly in and
India announced they were going to get off the dollar. Their currency did a flash crash overnight. This is in 2020. Go look it up. It was in July of 2020. Their currency dropped. It was like a meme coin. It dropped like 50% in an hour.
Wow.
And then it bounced right back up.
You call it a flash what?
A flash crash.
On the India currency. And we don't know.
Yeah.
But I could see some people in Washington D.C. So really? You want to get off the dollar? Yeah, we'll show you what we can do to your currency in about 10 minutes.
Exactly.
It's like, oh yeah, you know what? We'll play ball. Oh, and you have an aircraft carrier off our coast. Yeah, you know what? We'll trade. We'll keep trading with you guys. Yeah, dollar sounds great. Yeah, we'll comply. Yeah. So we take a little bit different approach to the dollar. They'll all play on Twitter like the dollar's dead. I go, well, not so far. Now I know it's a Ponzi scheme. I agree it's a Ponzi scheme. But guess what? We were all born into the Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, we were.
And it might keep going for 30 or 50 years or 100 years, or might go for 2 years. I don't know, but I don't think it's ending anytime soon. So I'll pause there. But that's kind of the thesis of the book. We can unpack that.
This is crazy.
I could talk for 2 hours on this.
I like it. Your passion is like oozing. I can tell you like love this stuff. So that's
and for the audience to know, this guy is 29 years old.
I know.
He's extremely smart. Let's talk about your social media. Following you and stuff. You just moved into a new house.
Yeah, it's fun.
So family, tell us about your family.
Yeah, I married my wife. We grew up in the same street together.
Oh wow!
We have a really fun love story. We both served church missions. So I went to Taiwan, served church mission, and she served in Portugal. And there was a long waiting period there. I had to wait for her and back and forth. And anyways, came back. We got married, and we have a son, 3-year-old son, and we have a baby on the way due in January. And we're just
that's awesome.
That's
like now.
That's like quick. It's like next month.
It was January. Another boy. Or do you
girl
coming,
nice. Which is fun, and we just want to keep building the family. We bought an acre and a half, so we have some chickens now. You mentioned the chickens at the beginning. Yep. We've been filming some ads or some videos of chickens. They're funny. We might get, I don't know, we'll get goats, or we're kind of doing a very low key little homestead, kind of a not the full homestead, but enough to post on social media and look like you're a homesteader.
I think a lot of us, and maybe your thought of this, but I think not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but for us, my wife and family, the pandemic kind of taught us to kind of like, maybe we should start living off the grid.
Off the grid more. Yeah.
Like with chickens and stuff. I grew up in the country, and I live back in the country.
I mean, you're up in the mountains where you probably have neighbors too.
Yeah.
Maybe not immediate neighbors, but there's people.
Well, no, COVID woke me up a ton. Yeah. I was like, shoot, everyone's lying to us. The government's lying to us.
Yeah.
And now it's been proven, like Twitter's lying to us. Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg said everyone was lying to us about what was safe and what's not. And then it's like, man, things are really fragile. Our system is fragile. Yeah, it's probably good to be a little more self-sufficient. It's probably good to be a little bit more on your own.
Well, I don't know how to farm, but we live really close to farmers. So hopefully I'll make good friends.
I think that's the number one thing that we don't have it yet, but that we would get as far as an animal is chickens. I mean, because
they seem pretty, pretty innocuous, pretty easy to.
We eat a lot of eggs.
They're pretty chill, and we eat a lot of eggs too. And if we fed them out of our hand. Now they just love us. They follow you around the yard where you walk around. They're like pets. They're like our favorite pets. So I'd recommend it. We have 5 chickens. We'll see if we get more.
That's awesome. Okay, well I'm excited to pick your brain. Just one more quick question is as our listeners are watching this or listening to this, you got so much knowledge. I feel like I wanted to keep interviewing about stuff, but what is like we're talking about funds or even cryptocurrency. We talked a little bit about some of these things. What's one thing that like today, if I'm just listening, a piece of advice you'd give me as far as improving my financial status or my ability to make money or keep money?
Well, it's a broad question, not financial advice at all.
Okay.
I'll just tell you what I'm
There
doing.
you go.
I mean, we run a crypto hedge fund right now, big in crypto. As far as, the date of this film, which is December of 2024, we are just entering the next bull cycle. I think it's healthy for people to study cycles of crypto. At least historically, crypto runs in 4-year cycles. We're just entering the 4th year of that 4th cycle. We had the 2021 run up, 2017 run up, 2013 run up. We are now entering, we believe, the 2025 run up. This is like 2021 with the NFT craze. 2017 we had the ICO craze. Remember this? And you had all your buddies talking about it. We were just starting that.
Real quick, because I know this answer, but I didn't know it before you taught me about a year ago. What was a result of a run up for people? Like 30% return, 50% return, like because it was shocking to me. I was like, whoa, that's what kind of looks like the trend goes every about 3 or 4 or 5 years. So tell me what a run up is.
Yeah. So they've been every cycle, it gets muted a little bit more, but last cycle, for example, Bitcoin did, if I recall, about a 20x bottom to top. Ethereum did about a 28x. So that's a 228x like times return.
Yeah.
Altcoins and then large caps did 30x's, 50x's, 100x's. This cycle, we believe Bitcoin is could do a 4 to 5. It's already done a 2.5x. Right? From really bottom to where it is now. If you bought the bottom perfectly,
that's not 2.5% return.
No,
that's
250%.
250% return. If you bought the bottom perfectly and you're out right now, we still think it's probably going to do a 5x this cycle. So it's probably halfway through. Ethereum, we think will do an 8 to 9x this cycle. And it's already, Ethereum's still 20% off its all-time highs though. Right now it's still low. And then altcoins and mids can do whatever. So, and typically capital flows that direction. So what we've seen, and again, things can always change, but in cycles, typically Bitcoin runs first. People then either shave profits or say, what's next? Ethereum then runs to a greater degree, then large caps, then alts. We even saw that this last month in a microcosm. If you saw from November, Trump's election till the date of this filming, Bitcoin ran first. Remember, Bitcoin was like, wow, Bitcoin's running. And nothing else moved. It was like, man, I guess Bitcoin's the thing. And then about 2 weeks later, Ethereum was like, wow, oh my gosh, Ethereum's moving. And then just barely what happened, XLM and XRP ran like 200% in a week. And so to a greater degree. And so we saw a little microcosm, we thought this month. We think that'll play out into, now again, these previous cycles, it's about 200 days after the Bitcoin halving, which we've already hit. Cycles can run from anywhere from 4 months to about 18 months. So that's a broad range. When's the top? I don't know. So we have a bunch of exit levels in our fund of every position we look at and we exit differently. But I would tell people right now is a great time to study crypto. Don't study it next July. That's going to be, in my opinion, like July is going to be potentially your peak of cycle. And
we'll put a note to revisit this episode in July. I'll put a reminder.
But a lot of people ask me is like, am I too late right now? I'm like, no, actually, we are buying right now. In 2 months though, that might be a different story, or 3 months. But as of today, I'm like very, very strong. But that now, this could all change. Cycle theory could break. We have ETFs out of potential Bitcoin strategic reserve, a million Bitcoins they want to buy over 5 years. Crazy. And then other countries following suit. Switzerland just announced that Pennsylvania, other states want to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Microsoft is looking to adopt Bitcoin. And they will probably do a similar strategy, by the way. They will buy Bitcoin and they go, well, what's next? Maybe we should buy a little bit of Ethereum, a little bit of XRP, a little bit of Solana. And it's just funny. They grow to greater degrees. And so that's at least historical
when did you discover
psychology.
Bitcoin?
I bought first in 2017.
Oh, wow.
On that run up.
Wow.
Yeah. I was in college at the time. I was like, this is interesting blockchain. I actually remember my dad came home to me. So my dad's, finance guy comes home and he literally sat down, me and my brother, and he goes, Bridger, blockchain. Have you heard the word blockchain before? And I said, no. He goes, have you heard of fire? Have you heard of automobiles? Have you heard of the internet? Blockchain is the next thing.
This is 2017.
This is 2017.
So he's a visionary then. I mean, you can tell because even right now you talk to people about blockchain and they go, what even is that?
Yeah.
And mixing blockchain with NFTs and other ways to authenticate lots of transactions.
It's pretty cool.
I mean, it is the.
And he told me, he's like, you're going to hear about blockchain every week for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
And you need to start figuring this out. So I started to look into, I launched my own little coin when I was 2017. It was, just to test it out.
Not a pump.
I was playing around with blockchains and stuff. And finally I just started buying coins and I didn't really know how to play though.
Yeah.
And that cycle, then it fell, right? And I think most people need to be trained through a cycle. Dan Young, my partner, he was in 2013, had the largest crypto facility in Utah mining.
Yeah.
And then he played that cycle. And then you kind of learn through cycles. You go, oh shoot, this is how it feels. This is how it tastes. This is how it looks. So finally we launched a fund in 2021 during the down. And we said, let's start buying now. And it's been pretty fun so far.
Cool. So I have to ask, and maybe you can just share with our listeners, our audience, you've got so much knowledge to share. It's crazy. Like even just this couple of short minutes. How can I get more of Bridger Pennington?
Well, you mentioned social media. So I post on pretty much all channels, Bridger_Pennington. I have a podcast and show. If you just look up Bridger Pennington, I think I'm the only Bridger Pennington so far on the internet. We'll see if that changes.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if anybody pops
that's
up.
Nice. Bridger Pennington or Fund
Right
Launch.
now, I'm the only Josh Siglowski. So
that's good. Oh, good. It is nice. It is nice having like that banner or whatever. So now it's a great place to go. So it's bridgerpennington.com or fundlaunch.com or just on social media. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I love it.
We have I'll say this just small. It's free though. Yeah. Can I give your audience free gifts?
Yes, please.
We built a whole free platform called Alt Street. It's completely free. You can join. We interview fund managers all over the world. We hired 3 people from Masterclass. It's very, very well done. My dad is on there. I did a full class. It looks and feels just like Masterclass for investment fund management. We wanted to, our goal is to democratize Wall Street. It's kind of our gift back to the universe. Yep. ALTST.org. You can go on there.
ST. Yep.
Yeah. Gotcha. ALTST. So altstreet.org. And it's totally free. You can go on and watch. We have Mark Malik. He runs a $1.5 billion quant fund. Talks all about running a quant fund on Wall Street, like how that works. And the intricacies, very, very interesting. He was a NASA engineer, all for free. So that's our kind of a gift to people.
I love that.
So
that's what I was kind of getting at is how do people learn more? I mean, it's you've obviously got my wheels turning and Josh's. We're going, oh my gosh. And so to be able to share, that's awesome. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Bridger, pleasure, man.
Thank you all
for coming.
Fun time.
Well, we got to sign off. So invest in your future.
Invest in yourself.
This is the Flat Bill Podcast signing off.
Yeah.